Thanks, Prasanna, for taking the time to be here. We want to talk to you about the impact Sikshana is having on the kids in various states of India and how Asha is supporting this project. So, first of all, I really want to welcome you and ask you that question on your involvement with Sikshana, because you've been a CEO and trustee for a long time. So, what's prompted you to join it, and how come you continue to be so passionately involved with it?
Yes. So, what prompted? I mean, multiple reasons, but I think one core thing is that I was part of like Asha for Education, like as a volunteer, right? So you get to be with like-minded people who want to give something back to the society, right? So it's just that the thought. I mean, I know I'm sure, like you, many others in your chapter, and also the people who are actually part of this event, right? Right. So that's already there. That's inbuilt, right? And each one will do in their own way. So I was like one of them. But rarely, I think an opportunity comes across somebody where you can actually jump in and do something, right? So that I think came to me like on a platter because the founder of Sikshana, Mr. E.S. Ramurthy, was a former head of BHEL, and I got him to Austin Asha chapter to talk to us, to all the volunteers, and to just to do some fundraising for Sikshana. That's all. They were in three schools back then, but when we heard them, I thought this is something interesting, and then it also gave me an idea that we have to work with the government because the scale, like in Karnataka alone, there are 48,000 government schools, and we trying to work with one school, 50 kids is not going to make a huge difference. So, but if you work with the system like the government, probably we can make that entire, all the 48,000 schools to get a benefit, right? So something like that was what Shikshana was initially aiming for. But it was very small, like, just three. I mean, so, but when he came there, we were all pressing him against, why are you not expanding? Why are you not doing this? Why are you not doing that? And all kinds of things. And at that point, he said, one way it can happen is if we get some professionals to come and run. And unfortunately, in this sector, that is the NGO social sector, we don't have many. I'm talking about 2005-6 time frame. Okay, so now we have many professionals in this sector, but those days there were not. So when that challenge was posed, he said, why can't you hire and things? All these things happen, but then he just made an offhand comment. If anybody in this audience feel that you can do the job, come over to Bangalore. I'll give you the keys. So so it's just that it stuck in my mind. Like, okay, I said, okay. By that time, we were all. By the way, we were already funding Shikshana. They were we were giving them teachers. Asha for Education was also giving them, Viva and aid. All, I mean, it was a collective thing, and I was also one of the donors. That's all. So when I heard that, I thought, okay, are you really serious? I mean, let me see. So and I came back to a Bangalore visit. I thought, okay, let me just go and meet him. And then, of course, I met him, and he said he was serious. Then he got me to meet the board of Shikshana, which was only 5 people at that time. But they were also like, okay, I was thinking taking a sabbatical, to be honest, 1 year, just go and do something, hands on. Because just funding alone was not being, it was not satisfying in some sense, right? But they convinced me 1 year too short in the education sector. You have to commit at least 2 years. If you do, we will give you the keys. I said, okay, let me try. So journey started in 2007 actually. So from there, I mean, Shikshana, but of course, coming from my background, I was not very clear in my thinking that I'm not going to run it like a non-profit. I mean, in the sense that out of taking pity on the beneficiaries. I mean, emotionally, I didn't want to do that. I want to take a very professional approach in this and said, okay, if I have to reach 48,000 schools, the government has to be convinced about our model. I mean, so if we create that, what scale should we go to them? I cannot go with 3 schools, 10 schools. So I wanted to take like, let us reach 1,000 schools where the government will take notice of us. So if I'm going to reach 1,000 schools, and from here, how do I jump up? So doubling every year. So 2012, set some targets, like within 5 years, we have to achieve this and, all of that. So basically, it was a very kind of a detailed, thought out approach to scale a social program. At that time, there was not many of such kind of a programs which were working at scale, right? So, anyway, so that got me in, and once I got in, and the 2 years, it became 3, 5, and then of course I had a 5 year plan, so I couldn't quit after two. So, but by 2020 we were already above 1,000 schools, and the government started talking to us, and one thing led to another. So so in before we knew, of course, like the story already there is that we were able to scale this to all the 48,000 schools across the state with the government of Karnataka reaching over 3 million children, and it continues. The program continues, right? So that journey, I mean, I just condensed it within but it was a long, 11-year thing to get the government to, even recognize us and work with us.
But that's huge. That's huge. Something motivated, stirred something inside you just by somebody asking, right? Would you come? And would you come in and commit? And I will give you the keys. And that's how we will scale this. And then, in the last 11 years, how you've scaled it. So
Yeah.
that is remarkable.
Exactly. So, I mean, if I really look back, maybe if he had not made that statement, I don't know whether I would have been that. I mean, see, I was happy in Austin, Texas. I mean, I've lived there all my life, kind of. I feel Austin is my hometown. And, well, I mean, it's all good, and, there's nothing. But just that one thing, provoked inside me, like, hey, why not? So, I think many of us will come up across situation like this, and I think I just got lucky to be in an environment where I could actually grab that opportunity, and things also should work in our favor.
I think it's the other way. Many of us may come across the opportunities like this, and one of us will pick it up, and you are that person. That's how I feel about this. This is very inspiring for me.
The
So,
other point you asked, I mean, let me also cover that, try to cover it, because you asked what kept you going, right? I mean, so because in this sector, I mean, to be honest, I mean, it's not, like hunky dory along the way. So it's a lot of things is like it's so well planned, and you go, that the program should work, or like in our case, the kid should learn, and you get so much deep into that. Like, I mean, I want to get these children to learn. I mean, there is no other, I'm not going to compromise, right? So when you do that, it's not going to happen. Like, I always think about a parent. I mean, one set of parents with one kid,
hmm, hmm,
all the resources available, we cannot guarantee that the child will learn. Like, right? I
hmm,
mean, it may learn, but not to maybe to the expectations or whatever. So when it's so difficult with one child for the parent alone, imagine like you're talking about 3 million children in a system where, I mean, they're all potentially all first generation learners. I mean, from a very difficult economic background, and given all of these things, it is a challenge. So what happens is in this process, you are not going to get a continual positive reinforcement of, hey, look, you're doing good, continue to do. It's not going to come.
hmm, hmm.
Very few here there you will get those things, like good stories comes once in a way, like, that kind of motivates you. But the thing is, like, there is enough disappointments that come along, especially when you're working with the government. There is a whole new set of challenges with the bureaucracy and policy changes and all of these things. So it's almost like I think of it like a marathon, right? I mean, myself, I'm a marathon runner, so I understand what it takes to
You
run. So
run
it,
marathons.
for me, yeah, I do ultra marathon. So I know what it takes to do like 50K. So that means you need to pace yourself up. I mean, there is going to be tough periods during that duration, but so for some people, like I've invited some friends who came and joined me in this sector, but they could not so sustain. So that I think you have to come up with that clear mindset that okay, I am here for the long run. It's not about how fast we finish. It's enduring this entire thing. So I think it over time, I mean, it will come. I just wanted to say that because I don't want people to think that it's going to be a very nice ride. It is it's not very.
It's not
Can't
like
understand that.
you do the work today, you don't get the reward today. The
You don't
reward
get
may come after 5 years. So, but
it.
you persistently show up and do the work every day.
Correct. See, that is where I think where I am very, very thankful to orgs like Asha and things like this because you guys understand that it won't come instantly. Like if I work with like a CSR don't I mean something else, right? They expect I'm going to fund you for 2 years. Now show me the result.
Hmm. Hmm.
But like Asha for Education or we bought aid and these people, I mean, you are all in for a longer term. You look at okay, we are going to make an investment into this, and we know it's going to be a long journey, and we are going to stay with you. So that gives us that support, right, to
Hmm.
actually try and fail uh, and
Hmm.
until we succeed. So I think that is something that I mean, you guys bring to the table to the nonprofit sector, which is I think most of us appreciate that.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. I have some questions about that. But now I'm interested in the fact that I was actually there, I was there two
Yeah.
months ago and I visited the Anganwadi, and I also went to the Gram Panchayat in Kanakpura, and Anganwadi saw the 3 to 5 year olds, and in the Gram Panchayat office we saw the high schoolers who were taking advantage of the digital libraries that Shikshana has set up. So you're working with the government, right? You're working with the government to make this at scale program. So give us a little bit of insight. Is what is the challenge you are trying to solve in working with the government, and what is the gap you are seeing where you said if Shikshana comes in and brings this at scale solution, we can improve what, right? So if you can give us insight into that.
So, funny thing, I mean, you see, I was a heavy critic of the government, before I got involved. So, always like fund some non-government, small NGO working. It's always like, I mean, it's a waste working with the government, right? I mean, because it is like that, right? From an outside world. But once we got in, I began to understand that government has its own constraints.
Hmm.
They're limited by what they can and they cannot do. For example, just take innovation as an example. Now I can go and I come up with an idea and I say, okay, I'm going to pilot this in 10 schools. I
Hmm.
can pilot this in 20, 50 schools, whatever. And I choose a region and I go and do it. No questions asked. If the government does the same thing, I say, okay, I'm going to innovate and pilot this in a small area. Which area? Right. There are 215 taluks, whatever. I mean, MLAs, each one has. He said, "Hey, why not my domain? Why not my?" So now suddenly, which area will they choose, and which school will they choose? So it's a lot of politics gets in there, and it's like they cannot please all, and they cannot innovate at scale, and that is a fact, right? So that is something that we need to appreciate. The
Hmm.
government has its constraints, so they cannot do this. But what can happen is we, as in the social sector, we can innovate and we can come up with small programs, and then go to the government and show it to them and tell them like, look, let us scale this, right? But only difference here is like when we do these small pilots, we have to be extremely conscious about the scaling part.
Hmm.
Because,
Hmm.
for example, in Sikshana, we have a litmus test. A very simple thing. Even the best of the ideas, if it comes to us, we'll ask one simple question: can the government do it or implement it? Right? If the answer is yes, then only we'll proceed. If not, we will just cancel it. If it
Hmm.
requires some special, so basically, it's almost like the. I heard one of the principal secretaries way back telling me that, look, you can do this in 1,000 schools because you hire the best of the people with the passion to make an impact, and but I have whatever 200,000 teachers uh, who may not all be passionate like your staff. So how do I get them to deliver the same kind of impact that your team can do, right? So that means we cannot focus on hiring people who are like passionate about this sector and want to make a change, and then we create a model which only works with a passionate set of people. So
Hmm.
so
Hmm.
rather than that, we should focus on, look, I'm going to hire locally any graduate or whatever the minimum qualification is looking for, and we give them the necessary training. We set up processes for them to follow, and they just follow like a checklist. Don't worry about
mm.
whether you like it or not. So so when you create a program like that, then it becomes easy for the government to scale.
Would
So
it be fair, Prasanna, to say that you take the existing programs in place and put process in them, you bring quality into them, but you assume that it's the same set of people who will be executing the program. There's no new people.
exactly,
And
then
so, how do we make it simple for them to
yes,
be implemented, but in turn, increase the quality of the output?
exactly. So when actually we were the first NGO in some sense, at least in Karnataka, to scale like this so rapidly, because we went from the government taking to two districts as a pilot on with their funding in 2017, and in 2018 they scaled to the entire state,
Hmm.
and no other NGO had this kind of a ramp up. Okay,
Hmm. Hmm.
so and the principal secretary was asked why, how did this happen, and in a public interview, and he gave his response was two things. He said, one, Shikshana program is extremely simple. I don't need to train anybody or like my team to run this program. It's as simple as that. And number two, extremely cost effective.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
like the program itself, the motivation part of the Shikshana program costs about 10 rupees per child per year.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
this is something when the government is looking at 3 million children, is just, scalable when very cost effective. So, this has been the mantra for Shikshana from day one. They've always been like, how do we get the cost down? How do we optimize? How do we do this? This is like reduce it to the bare minimum, right? So that it can scale. And then simple enough that anybody should be able to follow this set of process and do it. So if you do that, then there is a chance that I'm not guaranteeing that, but there is a good chance that it will scale with the government.
Yeah, yeah. And one thing I saw is how much trust, I mean, I only saw government employees who were there in Anganwadi and Gram Panchayat office, and the teacher there who was in Gram Panchayat office. They have trust in Shikshana. They have respect. Is that why you've generated so much trust and respect from the government, which is kind of even odd to say?
Yeah. Yeah. No, no, no. So
What
that correct, correct. So I think one of the mistakes, at least early small NGOs do is like when the first interaction with the government or with the stakeholders, right, is that they will be looked at, with some kind of a suspect for sure, because you have just gotten in, you have no track record, and it's, I mean, to be honest, on the other side, they've seen so many fly by night operators like come in, do something, take some good photo opportunity, I mean, things, and then create brochures, and they disappear from the
Hmm.
radar. So,
Hmm.
from if I sit from a government point of view, or from these schools or any of these stakeholders' point of view, right? They have seen so many people come and promise something and they never show up again. So that is why they don't really trust you in the beginning. But once they see you that you are there with them, you are there for the long run, and your the main thing for us, a success for us has been that we are willing to listen.
Hmm.
For example, take the Anganwadi program that you guys are just started to fund, right? Now, once we put the proposal out to you, 3 months before that, we were already visiting the Anganwadis, because
Hmm.
that is the first time we were entering the space. We just wanted to hear from them what is it that is preventing them from doing what they want to do. We are not asking them, why are you not doing it?
Hmm. Hmm.
Because their job is clearly defined. The Anganwadi worker has to take care of the little kids and help them learn, I mean,
Yeah.
and feed them and do all other things that they're supposed to do. If you go and start asking them, why are you not doing this? I mean, it won't work that way, right? Because they will take offense to that and, hey, look, who are you?
Yeah.
It's like that. So instead of that, we try to go and sit with them and understand what is preventing if they are not able to do everything as per.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
just try to be part of them and say them, look, we are trying to understand, we are trying to get into this space. In what way? This is all we know. We don't know how to take care of more than one kid, one baby. I don't think, So that's how I actually speak. When I talk to teachers or I talk to these Anganwadi workers, I honestly tell them I have one daughter and I have the most difficult time managing just that one. I know you deal with tens or even more in a classroom situation. So you know better. So I am not going to come and tell you that I know how to take care of things. But this is my skill. I can look from an outside perspective and I see I can make some suggestions. But to do that, I need to understand how you work and what is, And so once we get into this thing, then slowly they'll start opening up. Then we will figure out the pain points, right? Then we will try to. So that is what the Anganwadi program is now. We are addressing a very simple thing. They are completely overworked. They have no time. They want to give time to the kids, but they don't have time. So they want to make the kids play, but they don't have the time. So now, can we replace that duration, like 15 minutes, if the kids want to jump and sing and play? Just using a smartphone in place of that Anganwadi worker who is there in the room in supervising but taking care of other things, which is also part of her job, right? So I think this is how our ideas have come, right? And then you have to make sure that this scales. So we are not doing some fancy technology stuff because it
Not
has.
only, yeah, not only are you scaling, but you are able to show the return on investment. I mean, so much so that other states are inviting you and you're moving into other states as well. Um, what?
Yeah. So if, for example, this panchayat
Let's
program. Yeah.
go ahead, go ahead.
No. So the panchayat program, it's what happened was, since Karnataka government presented the case, I mean the case study at a national conference, the central government took it on themselves to write to all the state panchayat departments saying that, look, go to Karnataka, they have a fantastic model, you go and copy that and replicate in your state. So now the principal secretary here is getting a lot of calls and she's asking them, please go and talk to Sikshana. See, so in some ways now they have become our champions, right? I mean, the government itself, there is pride in it because they are also part of it. I mean, as you rightly said earlier, we don't work. I mean, we have a very small field presence. I mean, compared to what we are actually, how many schools we are covering or Gram Panchayat we are covering, we are very small. We are only about 200 people, right?
And
But but we
scaling,
are able to manage that because of all these other government teachers, government panchayat librarians, whatever it is. Now, Anganwadi workers, they're all paid by the government. They report to the, but we make sure that we all work as a team together and achieve that outcome.
one of the things which I saw, right, two things are coming up. One is you talked about the simplicity of your programs, and I saw that. I saw the cell phone in Anganwadi worker's hand, the teacher's hand, and how we saw the programming on that. So just how simple it was for her to use it and to interact with the kids through that. That was number one. Number two, what I heard, and it was in my conversation with you and Naveen, on how you are able to track the progress on a kid basis. You are able to say what are the gaps, how is this kid progressing, and you could do it to that level through technology. So I want you to talk a little bit more about what's the magic you are creating there.
Yeah, so I think for me, my first job in US, I worked in a construction company as a CTO, and I was the app that we were trying to develop. I mean, this I'm talking about Palm Tree, days, right? So I started to code something for that for the construction supervisors to use, like Texans and all 6 footers, and the touch screen. I mean, you had to make sure the user interface is so intuitive, simple enough that so for me, from those days, I've been always, that was my first exposure to creating simple systems for the for the end users, right? So that has carried me through, right? Once I came here, I still code quite a bit, create the systems. I mean, I'm not left technology completely. I'm still very much part of it, and so the user interfaces and all are a direct outcome of that type of an experience. So I think that is something we bring as an organization also to the government. It's one thing is to do these type of programs which can help the children, but the other, on the parallelly, we are continuously developing apps. Like one of the things I think I'll just mention here right away is we have an app called NIPKA, it's a Nipun Bharat Karnataka app, so which we have given it to the government of Karnataka, which is used to monitor all the 48,000 schools across the state. It's a very
Mm.
simple app, and it's a something that we wrote for our internal purpose way back in 2014. I started doing some messing with Android platform because Android was just taking off in India. So, in addition to what we bring as a program, every program comes with a very simple to use a monitoring mechanism built in into the program using typically Android apps or a web app or something like that. So that is a value add that we bring in, right? So that makes it uh, we make sure that all of these are very simple. So
Mm.
if any app requires training, I will tell my team it's dead. We cannot do it. We cannot go and train. So like the one you saw, Anganwadi worker, she may be 10th pass or I mean or not even 10th pass sometimes, we don't know. But they are comfortable using that. They
Mm.
just know just one time we show them and they get it. I mean and they know how to go back to 3 weeks ago activity and make the children do that same activity. It's very intuitive for them and this whole thing can be deployed without much of effort in training. Right?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
how I think one of the key to the success is that it's keep it simple for them to for the end user also to use and manage.
Yeah, and government also to see the results,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So now when it comes to tracking also,
Yeah.
the other part is lot of data collection happens actually
Mm.
in the
Mm.
system across multiple departments in government. I see that huge amount of data gets collected, but the problem is the people who generate the data, they never see the data.
Mm. Mm.
Usually it's done on a paper and it comes to the state office and it's somewhere in some file somebody's thing.
Mm.
Somebody may even do an analysis on the data, but it never goes back to that end point, Anganwadi worker or the teacher or the whatever the case may be. Nobody gets to know that. So one of the things that we bring to the table is that at every point, whoever generates the data, there is a mini dashboard that they see for themselves,
Mm.
which
Mm.
indicates to them, look, okay, I put in data for these 10 kids. Now, what are the within the 10 kids? How many of them have learned? How many? Some kind of a collation, simple, intuitive, something for them to look at. Okay, so out of my 10, 9 were singing perfectly fine. This one kid is not able to sing that particular thing. So maybe I'll spend more time with it. So giving that type of an instant feedback at the point of data collection makes it very easy for us to convince the people to enter the data in the first place, because otherwise they'll do it, it's a tedious task. I mean, what is the point in filling all this data? So and what kind of data we collect, make it very minimal, something that is actionable, and let's not do overdo on the data collection part. So keep it simple, like always the Sikshana thing. So we are able to manage that. So what happens at that point is when you are able to track children, I mean, not me as Sikshana, I'm talking about them as that Anganwadi worker or that teacher within their own classroom. If they're able to track the children at various levels where they are in terms of competency or learning levels, then it becomes they kind of own that and they start acting on it. And then of course, we can always sync this data up to the server, and now suddenly I have this a data
Yeah.
of 55 lakh students across the state of Karnataka for 2 years in 6 subjects. I mean, we did some massive data analysis with the state government. I mean, for that, of course, you need the right type of IAS officers who are tech savvy and who are really, want to get into the deeper into this. But we had some very good fun at that type of massive data analysis, data capture, and things like that. So, which helps in policy making, right? I mean,
Wow.
it's not always. So we could very clearly pinpoint there are areas in the state where certain mathematics, for example, certain competencies were not up to par, and then only those areas, the teachers in those areas received additional training in math. I mean that particular thing. So it can help actually the department to better deploy the limited resources. Again, everybody has limited resources. So, and what exactly do we train them on? So all this data would pinpoint to them, and of course the reliability of the data is the main thing, and for that if you give ownership of the data to the end user, then they make sure that they enter reliable data, right? So
Yeah,
it takes some time. Like earlier you mentioned, we will not see this overnight. Initially,
yeah,
when we do this, they fudge the numbers, right? Because they think, oh, somebody is going to look at it, so let me say all the 10 kids know this.
yeah,
They
yeah,
realize that it's not for us, it's for them. And then they say, okay, maybe I will report, a little bit more honestly. And then they realize that, okay, so actually putting the right number helps me in doing my job better. And then also, it's a motivating thing, right? Once they start seeing the graph move up, like kids are learning for a teacher's case, and so they get that motivation, right? We talk about Sikshana is all about motivation and nothing
yeah,
else.
yeah. They are inspired. There is ownership. There is empowerment for the teacher. Their work becomes more meaningful. If we talk about meaningful work, I can see the impact of my work. I am more inclined to do better work as a result.
Exactly, the same problem happens, right? I think we are now getting into a stage where we want to make this even beyond the classroom, right? So, because, for example, a sixth standard teacher does everything right, and then, of course, in that village, the kids move out or the teacher gets transferred away, and all those things happen. So, the teacher never gets to know what happened to the bunch of 36-year, sixth standard children I taught, or whatever, for 2 years I've been with them, and now where are they? Nobody knows, and teacher will never get to know, right?
Hmm.
Because of all this, the way things move here. So if we can get back to the teacher saying that, hey, look, you have 30 kids, you remember, 20 of them are doing this and five more are, or become engineers or doc, whatever it may be, right? Anything.
Hmm.
There is
Hmm.
no feedback that comes to the teacher,
Hmm.
and then they never get to see, and it's that type of a thing, right? So I think we can motivate a lot more teachers in this system who are always in this mode of getting transferred out, or the kids move out, migrant labor kids and all this. So if we have a just kind of a unified database where all of these are there, and we know exactly this teacher was in this school because there is a dice ID for the school, and these students IDs, and they are now in PUC second standard, or they are doing. I mean, so we can definitely do a better job with data to get the teachers
Even
into.
more excited and more reward they will feel rewarded that they worked on this kid and look where they have reached now.
Yeah.
On that note, how about you? I mean, is that also part of your reward system when you see some of
Yeah.
those kids who have, whom you have tracked and followed, and they have, doing something very different than their parents or their generations before would have done?
Yeah, yeah. I think there are many kids, but I definitely, want to bring one, at least one kid into this equation, because earlier days, 2007, 8, I used to go 5 days a week to the field, Kanakpura schools. And then we had introduced laptops in the schools at those days. Chandrayaan 1 happened, a lot of these things. So in that was like vibrant in that year. And I remember very clearly, I have a picture of this small boy called Mahesh in sixth grade. And he had done the Chandrayaan, like he had done an Aryabhatta type of a thing using the Squeak. It's a small talk based software where you can do just like Scratch today. It's a precursor to that. So using that, he had made like how it flies across
Wow, wow.
going. So I was like amazed to see this boy, and that motivated us to get a computer summit, like how we talk about Bangalore Tech Summit and all these big things these days. We had believe it or not, a computer summit in 2008 where 128 schools, which each one had a laptop, were sending at least 3 to 5 kids to the central location in Kanakpura. This was inside a temple. It was the
Mm.
Hanuman temple. Inside that, we had a computer summit where kids would come and present whatever
Wow.
project they had done for the rest of the thing. It's a 2 day summit. I mean, and this is where I saw what Mahesh had done, and I was like amazed at what he had done. So I kept tracking him. Of course, he got selected for our Delhi trip, and then we got high school scholarship also. And beyond that, of course, there are so many kids that we are always going through our channel, and then my field visits also started reducing. So I lost track of him for some time after some time, and then One fine day, this boy shows up into our office in Bangalore and says, like, "Hello, sir, I'm Mahesh, and
Oh,
uh, I have finished my engineering. I want to work in Sikshana." I was like,
oh,
"Wow!" So I said, "Yeah, immediately come and join us." So he's been with us for the last 4 years. He's a senior software engineer now. He develops a lot of the apps. I mean, in fact, our website, I would encourage you guys to go and look it up, Sikshana.org. He manages the entire thing, and he developed it. And from, I mean, his village where he was called Arakere, it did not have a road to get into the village. You had to stop on the main road about a kilometer and a half away and actually walk. There were no buses that was actually going to. It's a very, very small village, very small school. About 60 kids were there in that school, but I'm amazing. I love that school because I gave that school the most inquisitive school award. We had a lot of school awards at that time because each one of the kids were like that. There was another boy called Basavaraju, who is now a big time graphic artist in the Karnataka Bollywood, that is the sandalwood industry, right? So
wow.
he was deemed to be a failure because he was a son of a shepherd. He was never coming to the school and things. So we have, and one guy from Chenpatna who is now a civil engineer, and this girl, who's daughter of a flower seller who is now finished her engineering in BMS Bangalore, and the other girl who's now joined Divya, joined Dell. I mean, it's like I cannot keep track of them, but so basically, this is how I feel. The teachers will like, we touch at a very superficial level, I should say, because we are only giving them some things and making the teachers actually do it. So if I can feel happy that my little thing has done this much to this boy or girl, imagine a teacher how they will feel having spent so many years with the kid, like almost like their child. Because some teachers teach multi-grade. So they would have
Yes,
seen it through 4, 5, 6, 7, all of them in the primary, they'll be the same teacher, they would have taught, and then now if the boy girl becomes some. I mean, I think definitely if that feedback comes to the teacher, I think we do a lot. There is nothing more we need to do. Teachers know what to do, they will do it. So I think
yes,
that is something that we are also working on right now with the data systems that we have in place. How can we make this better? So that we will
yeah.
keep this positive feedback.
Yeah, those stories, they are, it's pictures worth a thousand words. Those I could just see, and I also actually met Mahesh. So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so
Correct. I think
his picture came right in front of me when you talked about him. And it's just so powerful to see the results of these efforts. Yeah, very nice. So I am going to transition gears here and talk more about Asha's involvement with Shikshana. And Asha actually works with Shikshana in a unique way. This You are our project where we're more like a venture capitalists. We kind of bet on you, on your ideas, and then we fund them, and then something big happens, and then from there on they become more, somebody else will scale them, help scale them. So can you talk a little bit about Asha's impact on Shikshana and that journey?
yeah. So I think right from day one, like Asha was the first one to jump in onto our motivation model, funding the motivation model, especially rural. Right when we went to Kanakpura, they were the first ones to fund 22 schools under the Asha project. So it became that is where the model Prerana, which eventually scaled up to the government, was started. Because in the urban setting, we were not really doing that as a model. So only when we went there, it started. And of course, since we were creating that model, I think we also informed Asha that we are not, going to be doing it like a traditional, NGO, activity where we do ABC and ensure that XYZ happened and and things like that. What we will do is we will try a bunch of things. Like, see, I'm saying this, how Asha's funds and it's so useful is because if you go back and look at the original proposal, you will see. I don't know how the current Asha team would be viewing it, but it says that we don't know exactly what will work,
Hmm.
but we will give each school. 2,000 rupees or 1,000 rupees per month, depending on the size of the school, number of children in the school. And we will tell the teachers, spend it in any way you want.
Hmm.
As long as you can prove that the kids will eventually learn because of this spend. Okay. And here are some rough guidelines. You can spend it under this item head, under this item head, under this. So basically, just give some broad guidelines and tell them, okay, you go and do it. Right. So just imagine there is nothing, it's as vague as that, right? But because you guys trusted us and said, okay, go ahead and try this, we started seeing a pattern among the spends within the teacher community. That pattern enabled us to kind of, so that is what I spent a lot of time between 2007 and 10 understanding the spending habits of these teachers across. By that time we had moved to across multiple, we are all, almost in 1,000 schools, right? How are teachers spending these 1,000 rupees or 2,000 rupees or whatever the case may be, money that we are cash we are giving them, how are they spending it? So we started seeing a pattern which was motivating students with small prizes, and so that is what eventually led to the stars thing. It is a motivational extrinsic reward because that was deemed to be number one requirement in the schools for the first generation learners, and these were by the teachers and by the kids. They said this is what we need, and that's what made it to the final model, right? So that is a level of flexibility that we got.
Hmm.
That
Hmm.
is why it's as good as any VC because there was no guarantee that we we would come out with a model which actually worked. We could have failed also. So
Hmm.
in that sense, I think you guys have funded like any VC would do, of course, within certain guidelines, and then we were able to use that money to develop that program. And once we got to a certain scale, we told you guys, look, we are done with this. The government is taking over. You don't need to fund us anymore. But here is another idea. So we were thinking about youth in the panchayats who are out of school, but we were not, they were not in this environment. So how do we? So we said, let us skill them properly. And that led to the next big thing, the Gram Panchayat initiative, which is now scaling up massively, not just in one state, but also I'm sure it is because of the central government's involvement, it will go to other places also. And
Yeah.
we are able to make the government invest a lot into these now,
So
right?
what's
So
tell us a little bit about that program because that was very inspiring to see these high school kids and see their dreams, and dreams have
yeah,
no boundaries.
correct. So what happens is like school as a space for learning works fine as long as the schools are open and everything. And during COVID, we saw what happens when the schools close, especially for these kids, because they have no other place. They don't have an online learning resource. They don't have anything else. So that's why when we came to Asha for doing something special for these kids when the during the COVID time, and so we digitized or put digital devices in these Gram Panchayat libraries along with an internet connection and made it like a shared public data infrastructure basically, right? And told them like, look, you can come in just like how you borrow a book, you can borrow the device like a smartphone or a Chromebook or whatever the case may be for 1 hour. Use it. If there is nobody else in the line, you can continue to use for the next 1 hour, or you return that device for the next user to use. So it's a shared resource. So it started off like that, and it has picked up so much steam now. I mean, it's gone actually just yesterday. That is today is what 27th, right? December 27th. So just yesterday, 26th. I actually am going to put a LinkedIn post tonight on this. We found I'm talking about students all this time as a use case for 10th standard student, 10th standard students. Now, we yesterday we got a story about this lady who was working as a sanitation worker in a small village in Coorg district.
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay. And she was told that she is not being made permanent. She's been working for the last 12 plus years. She is not being made a permanent employee because she has not passed 10th standard. So Panchayat officer said, if you pass 10th, we could have done. Sorry, you go and see if you can pass 10th exam. I'll make you permanent employee. So she was like, this 45-year-old.
Hmm.
In the
Hmm.
video, she says that she was very hesitant to go back to school. And this librarian got to know about this, Sujita, some one girl there. She talked to this lady and said, look, there is an app that Sikshana has given called Shikshanapedia. This has got self-learning material for 10th standard. Why don't you start using it? So she started apparently using it, and now she has cleared 10th.
Wow. Wow.
This is like, I know we talk about children and youth benefiting because we think that naturally they're tech savvy, they are learners. I mean, they are of this generation, they can adapt quickly. And I'm like, this use case, I could not imagine that something like this could ever happen with whatever we have put out there, right?
Yeah.
So this is what can happen, right? When we give them access, like, because giving them access, I think, is something that we have big time focused on in this particular project.
Yeah.
So outcome can be beyond whatever we can imagine also.
Yeah, yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? It's amazing. And one of the stories you were telling me was about, how much this can even broaden their thinking. For some of these kids may not ever have traveled in a train or not seen a train.
Exactly.
It's just, and now they're exposed to more knowledge, exposed to more information, exposed to pictures, images, videos.
Yeah, yeah. So initially, I have a video of this on our blog also, way back in 2008, when kids were sent to Delhi. I just randomly asked, how many of you have been on a train? Out
Yeah,
of the 30 kids or so, only three raised their hands.
yeah.
None of them others were ever on a train. You
Mm.
know. So of course now with the information age spreading, I mean, kids are much more aware. But I'm talking, but it's still there is this big gap between our kids, like what kind of exposure that they get compared to them. And I
Yeah.
think this kind of putting the digital devices out there and giving them access is going to cut short a lot of things for them. Like, I mean, the big gap, I mean, I used to talk about a lot of these kids, for example, even like Mahesh, for example, that I gave you earlier, there are many more like him, boys and girls who have come up to that level where they've finished engineering, but unfortunately they cannot get a job
Hmm. Hmm.
because they come up with this, they have this big gap.
Hmm.
It's very
Hmm.
difficult to fix at this point in time because it requires nurturing. I mean, whatever they have missed in the primary school, that kind of exposure, and whatever they missed in high school, the ability to communicate, the ability to understand the larger concept around the globe, what is happening in US, what is happening in some other country or whatever it may be. That whole piece is missing, right? And now suddenly you put them, they're good in technical skills, right? But beyond that, what? They just, they're limited in their ability to come up with solutions, and because of that type of a gap. So I used to think that, how do we help these kids? I cannot go back, and it's very tough to work one on one with them and do all of these things. But with this program, like just about a month ago, I was addressing a bunch of engineering women, our women in engineering program girls. So I was telling them, look, you don't have to worry about any of these things. With
Hmm.
technology, with ChatGPT coming and all these things, you can bridge whatever gap you have in no time at scale. I mean, so like we are now going to work with these kids at scale to try to help them, get over the gap, because then only they will be on par. Otherwise, on one side we are getting them academically move forward. They do the right things, they do well, they score a distinction and do everything. But that social gap that they come, if you don't address that, at the end point they realize that they are not as good as the others who are similar academic background, but they have a much better social thing.
Yeah.
So basically, this is something that I'm thinking. How do we get them across the finish line with that also, right? So we want to catch them young, and I think with technology, I'm very comfortable to say that, I mean, we will be there very soon. We will
Yeah.
ensure that.
You really, one of the big levers I think you have is how you are using technology, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Correct. So this is exactly. So I think tech will play a big role in address for in helping not just us. I mean, like the entire NGO sector, social sector. If we have to make this difference in the kids, we have to leverage technology, because
Mm.
that's the only way to address this big gap that has been built over years. right? Somebody who, like, for example, who never knew what an ocean looks like for first 10 years of their life.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
things like that, right? I mean, I still remember this one teacher telling me, once we introduced technology, what happened in a school? He said every year there was a simple math, the big, small, singular, plural, whatever that thing, simple thing that
Yeah.
the teachers assess in the fourth or fifth grade time. He had a question, apparently, it seems, which is bigger, a
Hmm.
boat or a ship? Like in
Hmm.
Kannada, it is Dhoni or a Hadagu.
Yeah.
And he said kids would like get 50% right, wrong, whatever they would guess, and and he said that year when we introduced the laptops, he actually took a picture
Huh.
of a carnival ship along with boats right next to it, right? And he used it in the classroom and said, "This is the ship Hadagu, and this is the Dhoni boat," right? And then that year he said he got 100% accurate answers from all the kids.
Yeah.
So the power, right, of knowing that. So just imagine kids who grew up in these small villages, isolated from the entire world for so many years. Suddenly, you can make them an engineer or a doctor, whatever, right? But that gap is still there, and that's going to hurt them. So we
Yeah.
have to bridge that.
Make that gap decrease.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, Prasanna, what's your inspiration for being in this role you are in? And now I don't think I need to ask that question. I can see it in your eyes because you can see that the effort you've made so far, your team, the results, and you can also see the gaps and the effort that still needs to be made to make a difference. What's the next step? I can almost see you, and your cycles are going in your head to see, okay,
Uh,
now I need to see, make sure that how do they have bigger exposure? How do they not have this gap when they start working in the industry? How do they be at par with the city bred kids who had all the resources available for them even when they were very, very young? So
And I think
I
this is
see
very
that in your
important
eyes.
for us because I think in our sector, we tend to, I mean, not just our sector, we become complacent because of whatever nature, human nature, I would say, after a certain point. And the biggest thing for us would have been when the government took over our program. That was like a big, big deal for us. The education minister, all the IS officers, they hosted an event in next to Vidhan Sabha in a major way, and they signed an MOU with us. Big day for us because that is something we were all dreaming about, handing over the model to the government. One day. So 2018 that happened. But once it happened, as soon as we came back and we were all getting into the car, one of our teammates, Smita, I don't think you met her during your trip. So she's been with us from 2011. So just you don't look, you're not very happy. What's
Mm,
wrong? I said, yeah, look, yeah, we did all these things, but this is not going to help the kid who don't know the basics, foundation, numeracy, and literacy, because there is some dilution that happened when we had to hand over the model. Now the government is going to focus on grade level skills, but I'm still not happy with this because this is not going to help at the bottom the kids who have, for whatever reason, have missed some part of schooling and now suddenly they're finding a grade that they are not comfortable in. So we need to figure something out. Right? So it's like, even so the thing is, I want each one of my team members, especially the ones in the field, because if they feel satisfied and happy with whatever they see, because they see these things on a daily basis that I get to hear once in a while. So when that happens, they should not become complacent. Like,
mm.
okay, so I see this. Okay, so yeah, this 40-year-old lady now cracked the 10th standard. Yes, great. Now what next? Okay.
And also now there is yet another opportunity area.
Exactly.
Who other 43-year-olds are out there who can get their 10th
Okay,
standard?
how can we can I get the word around to other librarians in other talukas or other gram panchayats?
Yeah.
Look around, see if there are any other ways technology can help.
Yeah,
What can
maybe
we
there are
do?
more people who are taking the 10th standard exams, more older people who are taking 10th standard exam, because now all that content is available, right? It's so easy for them to access that content.
I think we can keep running. At least in my case, I think people ask me, so when do you think, because once we handed over the government the model, they said, so I think your job is done now. Are you going to quit Shiksha? I mean, do something else or what? So I said, no. As long as I see a use case for there is some opportunity for us to, at least with our skills, can we do something? If not, I mean, I will be happy to go back as a donor and start funding an initiative which somebody else is running, which is make delivering the impact. But my skill should have a direct impact on a particular child, or whatever the now I will not use the word child anymore because we have a 45-year-old kid passing the I just say students, right? As long as you're able to, as Sikshana Foundation, if you are able to help students, no matter what their age is, if you are, I think I'll keep going, and our team will keep going, and and I hope that you all join us along for the ride and keep benefiting as many as we can until we reach a point where I say, I think people ask me, why did you join Shikshana? My goal of joining Shikshana from day one has been to shut it down. The idea behind this is we should get to a point in time where no kid in the state needs help from an NGO.
Hmm.
The
Hmm.
government is delivering everything that the child needs. There is no need for an NGO like Shikshana to come in and do anything. That's
Hmm.
the point where I can comfortably say that let's close operations and close Shikshana and move on. So that has been the goal. So that actually, that one simple thing is helping me come up with programs which are not holding. We are not holding those programs. We are actually giving all the, like, the panchayat program is already with the panchayat. RDP,
Hmm. Hmm.
Anganwadi, right from day one, we are involving with the director of Child, Women and Child Welfare Department to actually be part of this so that I can give it to them as soon as possible, right? So basically, once we create that, I feel that a need for an NGO like 600 to exist itself will cease, and then that's an ideal end state that we should all work for.
Yeah, because you can keep you. The idea is to make the government more efficient. Idea is to make these programs which are already funded by government become, more productive and get the results.
Exactly. So since there is a system in place to do a deliver, and then let it deliver, that's all. I mean, as
Yeah.
a non-government organization, I don't like the word at all, non-governmental thing, but
Mm.
maybe a co-government organization is what I would refer myself as, because a non-government would have a very negative connotation in the sense that I have nothing to do with the government. So I am a co-government.
Co-government, right?
We co-create, and then once it's done, we have to step back. I mean, we
Mm.
should not be there in the space picking up things after the government. So we have to get them to be
Own
on
it.
their own
Go
it.
back to the same way the teachers to own the development of the child so that they can
Exactly.
self-report in a good way. Same way the government to own the
Exactly.
own the programs and their results.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess so. We know that one of the reasons I've been interviewing you today is also for this Nazarana event, which we are organizing for our donors and people who are interested in Asha for education. And my question is, what's your message for people in the audience today?
Yeah, so normally when I interact with people, right, and share like my journey, I've also noticed that there is a wish usually on the other side that, oh, I wish I could do something like what you are doing or something like that. Some have expressed it openly, some I have observed in their face or whatever, right? I mean, it's but it's there. It does happen. I know that that happens when I heard somebody like this first time in an 8 chapter meeting in Austin. I also felt, hey, look, I wish I could go back and do something like this, right? I mean, but at that point in time, I could not. In 2003, I was not in a position to do that. But it did hit me, and I'm sure it does. So the thing is, like, I could do what I could do because of circumstances and all of this, like I talked about earlier, opportunities. But each one of us are playing a role in this, right? I mean, the people here today who are part of this fundraiser, for example, every little contribution, like I'm talking about, like for the Prerana program, at 10 rupees per child per year. Just imagine, like the scale in terms of whatever the exchange rate currently, whatever contribution you're making, then your contribution that it can impact that many kids,
Hmm.
that scale, and and that is one thing. One is direct one, and other one is like you help innovate programs like these, like for example, the Anganwadi program. If we actually crack this program and make it, because this is the toughest one. Everybody understand that early education is the most critical piece in that entire child's development. Like I talked about the gap earlier, right? If a child misses that Anganwadi, the preschool thing, and comes straight to first standard, it's at a very different level compared to all other kids who are coming from play homes and all these things, right? LKG, UKG kind of a kid. So now it's very tough for the first standard teacher to fill that gap and continue to take the child. So that is the most critical phase when kids can learn three languages, five languages, all kinds of things we know, and we have seen it in our kids. So if we can crack this Anganwadi problem, because
Hmm.
it's actually not working. To be honest, it's a complete farce. I mean, the Anganwadi worker is so stressed out. She has to take care of the pregnant women coming into the Anganwadi for medicines. They have to cook for these kids. I mean, where is the learning? There is no time for that.
There is no
It's not
learning,
going to
right? They
happen.
don't have the
We
bandwidth.
don't have, and they put them through some trainings for what?
Hmm.
Like, take for example, very simple thing. Each child is supposed to sing some song. Okay, I think I'll share that song also with you so your audience also can understand. A very simple song. Okay, now they've created some wonderful songs. These are all lyrics only have been given,
Mhm.
and the expectation is that this Anganwadi worker who is a 10th pass or whatever that person will actually look through, read, compose some kind of a music,
Music.
and then make the kids sing along. And this lady or she also sings, and the kids will sing along. And they put them through 1 day training and say, okay, here are 250 songs for the year. Go and sing with the kids. How is that going to happen? Oh, it's just not. So that manual sits in a corner and collects dust and all those things. So what we are doing is we are done a very simple the smartphone solution. We are getting some local volunteers to professional musicians to create fantastic music for this. We'll put all of these things in the app. So the Anganwadi worker, when the pregnant woman walks in, whatever to take care of them, she will just put this on and say, "Hey, look, kids, sing along." So very professionally, well done music, musical thing. And the kids will start singing. She can go take care of it, come back in 10 minutes, and continue to sing with the kids. And see, a very simple help of this type will have a major impact. I mean, just imagine, I don't know, across every village has an Anganwadi actually. So there are about whatever six times 420. It's about 30,000 villages, or where there is potentially that many Anganwadis times at least 10 to 20 kids per Anganwadi. That many kids singing beautifully on a note at the right scale. I mean, just how many musicians may come out? I don't know. It's because at that age, if you give them like how to sing at that right pitch and note and all those things, and I'm sure somebody will surface from there. So I'm talking about just one aspect of an Anganwadi learning, which is just so. I think this is the key, right? I
Mm,
mean,
it's the exposure. As you're saying, it's the exposure. These kids, if they are getting the exposure to the music, exposure to motor skills, exposure to, doing artwork, just in a consistent way, right?
correct.
Not,
So when
not, it's
you
not dependent on the education of the teacher in Anganwadi, which can vary from eighth grade to a BA.
correct. So see now the people here in the audience who are funding, Asha for Education, your chapter right now, which actually is funding this Anganwadi program, the impact will be this. If we crack this and come up with a solution which will scale to all Anganwadis, we are going to have an impact of that magnitude. So that is how you should look at your contribution today. Don't think of it as this 10 Anganwadis or whatever, this 100 kids are benefiting from this, because we are actually creating a model
Hmm. Hmm.
with millions in one shot.
And it
So
may reach
that
the entire country or maybe outside the country.
correct. So I think you should all be very proud that you are, and also we talked about getting an opportunity. I think Asha is creating that opportunity for you to actually fund something that can impact at that scale, right?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
you will not get that many opportunities. You will typically get one opportunity to fund 10 children and food for them for 1 year. I mean, these are all, I'm not downplaying any of those things. They are also essential. There are a lot of things that are actually required in our country right now. But I'm saying here is an opportunity, very unusual one, where you can potentially impact a huge number of children. The entire system can change,
Hmm.
and I think that is something you should grab.
And it's a system level change.
System level change, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's huge. Thank you so much, Prasanna, for spending the time, for
Yeah, yeah.
walking us through your own journey, walking us through the journey of Shikshana, and also making an appeal to everyone to contribute in a big-hearted way today.
Yeah. Thank you for being part of Shikshana journey all these years.
Thank you.
Thank you.